Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I'm leaving.
I don't think he felt anything after the crash.
Hello and welcome back. We are breaking up with RBS. This is episode number 64, and I am Tawny Santabria.
And I am JDK Winnikin. We are here to, once again, debunk the junk. 64th time. And there's always more.
Mm-hmm. Always.
Always more. So thanks to all of you for listening. If you're listening live, thank you so much for doing so. You can always find this also and all our other episodes wherever you find your podcast. Thank you so much for subscribing and leaving us a review. You can also get a video feed of this episode and all our other episodes at our YouTube channel. Just look up Breaking Up with RBS. You can also join our Facebook group of the same name and connect with us between episodes, get some other content, interact with other listeners, all that good stuff. There's so many different places where people can find the avenues to debunk the junk. So how are you, Tawny? How's your week?
My week is good. Getting caught up on all of the things that I had to put on hold for a little while. So I'm feeling like I'm getting there. Feels good.
Well, good. Well, it's up here in the Northwest, it's definitely winter, and we can usually tell that by how dark it gets, how early. And it's certainly been cold lately, hence I'm all kind of snugged up even here in the studio. And certainly the holidays are upon us, and there's a whole lot of emotion and BS stories that come up during the holidays, aren't there?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. A lot of perfect, like things needing to be perfect. That shows up quite a bit in the holidays, but certainly ways in which it won't be perfect. Stories around that too show up quite a bit, right? All over the place.
Yeah. And then all the different ways that we try to navigate them, or that we try to quote unquote make it through them, right? Which I always find really interesting because they're supposed to be times of relaxation and reflection and hope and joy. And then they seem sometimes for some people, and at some moments, maybe for everybody, more stressful than we really want them to be.
Yeah, just they become so busy with all the different things that need to be done. Or again, if we want things to be perfect, I know I have talked with clients for years around that need for perfect when we're coming to like doing the holiday party or the family coming over for Christmas Eve and needing all the food and the decorations and the lights and the gifts. I get tired listening to it.
Yeah, because all of a sudden it can be a list longer than Santa's list.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how people do it. There have been times where I just thought to myself, when do you sleep? When do you sleep? Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of expectations can come with it, right? We can all be bringing our expectations over what a great holiday is supposed to be like. What is it supposed to include? And, and the pressures that come with that, the pressures of, well, I need to go see so-and-so or go to so-and-so's house for the holiday. Because if I don't, then I'm not a good son, daughter, friend, whatever it might be. So I don't know. It's exhausting to me. As you know, and I have no trouble sharing with listeners, but as you know, Tawny, it's been only relatively recently that the holidays have ceased to be difficult for me. I used to have real trouble during the holidays, and in looking back on it, the biggest culprit was all the stories I was telling myself about how things were supposed to be or where I should be in life at this point as opposed to where I was last year. And I found myself for a lot of years facing the coming holidays with more dread than really what I wanted to be feeling, which was gratitude and hope for the future and maybe some rest and rejuvenation, those types of things. I'm so much happier that I don't do that as much. I can still feel sadness, and there are certain things that can drive me nuts. Holiday messaging
Mm-hmm.
can really get me going sometimes, and we can talk about that if you want to, but and only if you want to see me get really upset, I suppose. We can talk about car commercials and all that
Uh-oh.
kind of stuff. Yeah. Ugh. Does anybody really give each other cars at the holidays? Like
Yeah.
all the car companies want us to believe.
Hmm. Hmm. But that's a good point. It's a good point that we are hit with a lot of marketing during the
Mm,
holidays,
yeah.
right? Because that's kind of a big part of the holidays.
Hmm.
And marketing is meant to make us feel something.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And it's based
So,
in storytelling.
uh-huh. Well, absolutely. And we're hit with it to a greater degree oftentimes around the
Hmm.
holidays.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, and you can tell by what the content usually is. It's obviously around gift giving, right? And then the happiness that someone feels upon getting it, the happiness of the person giving it. There's a sense of togetherness, of sharing. There's all these kinds of visuals that go with it. And the challenge can be, for someone like me, where it was, is I always felt sort of outside of that, right? That wasn't really my reality. And so those weren't things I was going to be participating in. But I also know from talking to people and talking to clients currently right now, that there's some people who go through the motions of feeling like they just go through all those things like they are happy, like they are grateful, and they're not. They feel like they're playing a role every holiday, and not really showing what they're feeling or expressing what they're feeling or acknowledging it, maybe even to themselves. And uh, it's a really interesting dynamic, the amount of pressure that the messaging that we get and the expectations that we put on ourselves and others at the holidays can really feed those BS stories about a lot of things.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it diminishes the meaningfulness
Mm,
that
yeah.
we might be able to access. But when we're caught up in all the shoulds and how we think we should feel or what we believe to be accessible to us and all of the things, then we're outside of even experiencing what might be meaningful for us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so then there's a
Yeah.
sense of like lack or a sense of like what's wrong with me
Hmm.
that I'm not enjoying this like everybody else on the commercials are.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I've seen, and it's happened with me, and I've seen it happen with other people, is sometimes that can lead to a cynicism about the whole thing, right? Well, it's all just commercial. It's all just marketing, and then cynicism about this is, why don't we care about the homeless and kids, without toys the rest of the year, all these kinds of things that, at least in my case, for me, I recognize now was more about protection, wanting to shove away all the feelings I was feeling, the loneliness, the disconnect, the fear around the holidays, the feeling like I wasn't doing enough with my life. Not being willing to really take a look and sit with those feelings was behind that. And so cynicism is another set of stories, right? Or at least it can
Mhm.
be.
Yeah, yeah. The story of the holidays supposed to be magical. Like we're supposed to have this magical sort of experience in the holidays.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like that's a huge pressurized story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And when I was able to start allowing myself to be all right with whatever was happening, whatever feelings were coming up, ironically is when over time a lot of those negative feelings just didn't become nearly as powerful because I wasn't fighting them so hard.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Like if we've got a lot of ideas and thoughts about how things should be, then we're already setting ourselves up for a problem.
Hmm.
Instead of really being with, okay, how things are or how I'd like things to be. It's okay not to get caught up in the craze. We don't have to get caught up in the craze,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We can form our own way of doing the holidays
Hmm.
if we're not enjoying the way that was maybe set for us, or that the way that we chose it to be, whether we did that consciously or subconsciously, right? Or just kind of took on the traditions of our childhood.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's funny because a couple years ago when we were in the middle of the pandemic and people were not traveling and were spending the holidays on their own, I remember that period of time for so many people as a period of turmoil for lots of reasons. But the inability to do the regular things, the expected things. We have the traditions of doing this, and this, and going here, and we're not able to do that. And it was the first time that I had not been with my extended family, really, uh, at least as far back as I could remember. And what was interesting about that Christmas was I had a wonderful time. Like
Mhm.
it was, and it wasn't because I wasn't with people. It
Mhm.
was because being able to accept the reality that things were different, it put it right in my lap to decide how I wanted it to be. And I still talked to the people that I wanted to talk to. I jumped on FaceTime with people, talked to some on the phone, but I made a great meal for myself. I had music and candles. I watched a movie. I pampered myself. And I spent time reading some things I wanted to read. And I felt so incredibly empowered by what I was doing for myself. And I ended up having a great time. It wasn't about whether it was better than those other things. It was, am I enjoying what I'm doing? And the ability to choose things for myself. I knew at the end of that holiday that the holidays were going to be different for me from that point on, because I saw the level of choice I had to give myself a great experience. And
Mhm.
it's changed, even though the last couple of holidays I've spent with family as I normally do, it's been a different experience because of the choice I've realized I can bring into it. And that to me is the exciting part about the possibility of the holidays, in terms of ignoring these stories or letting them pass through or accepting the emotions that come. So I'm actually now feeling pretty good about the holidays.
Yeah. Well, and so you get an experience one year, you get an experience of really, okay, I get to choose what I want. And that experience isn't just a filler. That
Hmm.
experience is something that changes things,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it didn't change it to where, oh, I just want to do holidays all on my own. It didn't change it to that because, like you said, you spent time with your family since.
Yeah.
But then that changed that experience with your family because of that initial holiday on your own.
Yeah.
So what do you remember what you were grateful for at that holiday?
I do, very deeply, in part because that was a major part of what I was focusing on. Was I was really investing in that, and so um, gratitude was what I really wanted to focus on. And so the people that I made sure that I connected with were the people I was most grateful for. So I really wanted to connect with them, even if it was just for 5 minutes. But for with a couple people, it was longer conversations. I was grateful for that. I was certainly considering that time what was happening. I was grateful for my health, and I was grateful for that I had the basics that my life needs, and had them for a while. I had, a roof over my head. I had good food to celebrate, but I always had food. I remember the list was really long. I had comfortable sheets for my bed. I had really good slippers that I could put on. It was a really cool, crisp, clear night that Christmas Eve, and I was able to see the stars outside and enjoy the quiet of the neighborhood. And so it was all those things that were real in my life, that because I took the opportunity to just stop and slow down and really focus on listing out, pretty soon my list became so long I just stopped keeping a list. And then having that time, and then recognizing that I was also really okay with it and feeling great. I can't tell you how grateful I was that I felt great on Christmas Eve. It was amazing. And that had a long lasting impact well beyond just that night, well beyond it. And that's the fun thing about breaking up with these stories is that when we do that, whether they're around the holidays or not, they introduce new possibilities, don't they, into what we can do going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And without the new possibility, the actual experience of the new possibility, we do tend to just really hold on to those old stories. So in a lot of ways, we want to be able to start to cultivate the context for difference.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we won't know because the experience is in our body. We can't just, you couldn't have thought your way into that.
No.
You had to have the experience of that
Mm-hmm.
to really feel that the level of gratitude that you can have in your life. So instead of thinking about all the things that, aren't going well or all the ways that you're not where you want to be, you were able to be grateful, feel grateful for heat and and comfort and a good meal and certain people in your life, right? And that's the part of gratitude that is moment to moment to moment to moment meaningful experiences that add up. We want to be in a context or in a state of awareness where we can really feel those things instead of having to just tell ourselves at the end of the day, okay, well, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. Okay, I got my 3. Now I can go to bed. Right? We want to be able to really real time start to experience that. And I think that's what I was talking a little bit about our last show with grief and gratitude. It was like in this moment, holding both.
Yeah.
About this, a small thing perhaps. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, I think it's an important point because, what I don't want to give the impression that somehow the holidays don't bring difficulty for me anymore, because sometimes they do. Those same stories that I was once feeding, supercharging, they still come up, right? You heard the shift in the tone of voice when I started talking about those car commercials. Those still come up. The difference now is because, with the awareness from being from a place of presence and having the experience more and more of sitting in more gratitude than in storytelling, those stories, when they come around, I recognize them sooner, and then I don't feed them as much or for as long, right? Or as intensely as I once did. And it becomes easier over time to be focused more on the gratitude part and to allow those feelings of whatever it might be, sadness, loneliness, to recognize them that this is how they show up during the holidays and to let them in, and they don't stay nearly as long as they used to. Mainly because I don't think I'm trying to either keep them out or throw them out the door.
Yeah, you're not giving them reason. You're just letting them hang out, and they'll be able to choose. Essentially, choose sort of their flow with your acceptance that they're there. Right? When we're not experiencing resistance either towards us or we're not creating resistance, flow continues. And flow moves, resistance doesn't.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. And for me, I always wanted to resist, right? I always wanted to resist, or I felt I had to resist. I told my story, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be grateful. I should feel happy. I should be excited about all these different things that are planning to do. And I was the championship compartmentalizer. Pick it up, stow it away. But man, I'm remembering it in my body right now, what that felt like. And it's exhausting just to remember it in my body right now. It's like my body decided to jump in on this conversation and say, blah, blah. What am I noticing?
Yeah. What are you noticing in there?
Like my shoulders are wanting to push forward, to hunch up, to tense up. My body temperature has gone up a little bit, and it's not just because I'm wearing a coat in the studio. So there's that. My heart rate is up a little, and I can feel emotional pressure behind my eyes, like like almost like an energy there, that it doesn't, so I have all these different tight spots in my body, and below the desk here, my feet are moving around quite a bit. So I do not have, it's just an echo of it. But it's almost like in the midst of this, my body said, let me remind you, as you're talking about this, what this used to feel like. And it doesn't feel good. I don't like this combination of things. And yet, it's, once upon a time, I wouldn't have recognized any of this. I would have been in my head, whatever the story was, that's where my energy was going. The rest of this would have been ignored.
And you just made a really great point, because certainly, if we're not aware of any of this, we tend to just be up in our head thinking about all the things, just the tightness in our low back and the tension in our shoulders and our tight hips are just things because we're getting older, or we had a good workout or a bad one or whatever, right? Or related to injury or whatever it is, right? We just kind of write it off as that. But when we start to be aware, we can see that a thought or a particular memory can create tension in the body right away.
Yep.
Especially if it's based on something that was held for a really long time. Right? It can happen immediately. Most of the time, we don't even know it. We're not even aware because we haven't been taught to pay attention. So now we're starting to pay attention, and then we can start to feel like, whoa, that particular story, when I get on the train with it, my body does certain things in response.
Yeah. 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 Well, I'm glad to know that this doesn't surprise you, because to be honest, it's caught me off guard a little bit. Like it shouldn't, I guess, but it has. I mean, it's interesting, this response that I'm getting talking about it. And so as you were talking there, I was sort of breathing into it, letting it expand out a little bit more, and noticing where all those pressure points are,
Yeah. And so that's the part of like, we don't have to be, sometimes we talk about presencing and we talk about softening into and breathing into. And a lot of times people think like, okay, that means I need to be really, calm and still. And sometimes, yes, sometimes that can be really helpful. But if we're thinking about also that flow, right? Sometimes movement, but not rigidity, because rigidity is tight, right? So we can even have a thought and we can tense up, but we're closing in on ourselves, right? So sometimes the movement piece, the softening into movement, can be really helpful, and we might notice our body wants to move. That can be really helpful to allow it to move. Because there might be something in there like, no, like stay soft. Like let's keep letting it move. Let's not tighten all up. But our natural tendency is to protect ourselves. We've got that story, protect ourselves, tighten in, and get real still. So there can be helpful still with flow, and still with tension. I just want to point, I had a question about that. So I thought it was a great time to point that out, if that makes sense at all.
It does. And the visual that came to mind for me while you were talking is one we've used before about a palm tree, that is deeply rooted, but, the wind is blowing and it moves back and forth and is very flexible, and I find myself kind of wanting to kind of mimic that, be a little rooted where I'm sitting and let the rest of this move a little bit. So if you're watching on the video feed, you probably noticed me moving around a little bit. This isn't me trying to force anything. It's me just really trying to listen to what my body wants to be doing. So you can see that, can't you, Tawny? I'm kind of swaying a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when we let our body experience what it is, what's coming in, and we work with that. Yeah, a lot of times there's a lot of movement that the body wants to have, that we sometimes just say from our headspace, like, no, or we don't even listen for. But that movement and flow is something that when we're feeling an urge for that, having fun with that.
Yeah, and you know what I'm noticing? It's a lot like when I asked you last week how you were feeling coming back from, from your hiatus, and you talked about the intertwining of the gratitude and grief. I have a little bit of that going on, thinking back on how difficult the holidays once were, and I have sadness and some grief around that, and some sadness for where I was then, and also this real deep gratitude that I'm not there anymore, that it's different. And I think that's sort of what I'm experiencing, is both of those at the same time, kind of flowing through, intertwined.
Yeah. That's awesome. So that's creating that movement, that energy.
Yep. Undoubtedly. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's I have a feeling we're going to be hearing from people around stuff around the holidays and BS stories. I don't know about you, but I think we're going to hear from some people. And certainly if anybody listening has any, make sure you reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk about them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, look at this.
That's that part.
What? Go ahead.
No, well, I think we're running out of time, aren't we?
We are. We could continue to go, but yeah, so we'll just kind of keep this conversation going. Like I said, I think we're going to be having more of these as the holidays go. So thank you to all of you for listening to another episode of Breaking Up with RBS. Hope that the holiday stories are things that you begin to recognize and not necessarily feed. Be sure you reach out to us, on social media, at our Facebook group. Thanks so much for subscribing to this as a podcast, or checking us out on our YouTube channel. Be sure to check out Tawny's 6-week self-mastery course at unperfectyourself.com, where you can sign up for that and start experiencing all these things we're talking about in the context of your own life and see how this all lands for you. And we'll be back next week with another episode. And until then, I am JDK Winnikin.
And I'm Tawny Santabria.
All right. And we will see you next week. Take care, everybody.
I'm in my groove. Here we go. Break a friend.